Armored Core 6 has already been out for over a year. Can you believe it? It almost feels like it was yesterday when I first set foot on Rubicon in my trusty old Loda 4. But alas, my journey on that planet has ended long ago, and I think that it's fair to dream a little bit about the future. Welcome everyone to the most unhinged Armored Core 7 speculation video you'll probably find on this platform. I want to start this video off by saying that everything that will come out of my mouth in the next however long this video will be shouldn't be taken too seriously. I'm just throwing some funny little ideas out there and I'm not trying to seriously predict the next game based on some imaginary evidence that I've crafted. I'm here to get wacky. That being said, let's get into it, shall we? Armored Core 7 should be an open-world, live service, gacha, MMO, hero shoot. Okay, no, I'm just joking. But I do want to start off with kind of a crazy idea that I've already outlined in my community Discord server. Go and join us there, by the way. Links are in the description. Reviving this long-dormant franchise was a risky task for FromSoft. They wanted to appeal to both their old and new fans, so Armored Core 6 ended up becoming a blend of new ideas brought in through their newer works, while also trying to retain the charm of the earlier entries in the series. And it's safe to say that this approach worked out really well, as AC6 went on to become the best-selling game in the series. So, this could potentially mean that From might have the confidence to scale up the next project substantially. What if Armored Core 7 gets the same treatment that Elden Ring did? No, I'm not talking about it being open world, but rather, we could reach for the stars. Imagine this. The game starts off with a serene shot of a ship slowly drifting through space. A sudden camera change interrupts the scene and reveals that you are in orbit around an unknown planet, much like in the opening cinematic of Armored Core 6. But a key difference is that you aren't alone, but there's a whole fleet of small to medium-sized ships making their way through space. All of a sudden, you hear an explosion towards the tail end of the fleet as a few unknown spaceships emerge from the cloud of debris left behind from their initial attack. As all hell starts to break loose and the remaining ships in your fleet attempt to defend themselves, you start hearing a voice which proceeds to bark orders at you.
To all orbital-class Armored Core pilots, deploy immediately to protect the cargo ships and neutralize the pirate threat. You are clear to use whatever force you deem necessary to accomplish this task. We cannot afford to lose out on this job. There's way too much money on the line.
As the screen fades to black, you can hear the sound of your Armored Core's booting sequence finishing up the last steps before deployment. And next thing you know, you're out in space, ready for combat. I hope you like this little visualization. Now, what I actually wanted to tell you with this whole segment, besides just putting my fanfic out there, is that I believe that FromSoft could feel more confident in scaling up the scope of this franchise. This is what I meant when I said that Armored Core 7 could get the Elden Ring treatment. We could end up visiting multiple planets or other celestial bodies in our quest for money, fame, power, or whatever else they could come up with. This increase in scope for the game's world would obviously also necessitate some new gameplay systems, like zero-gravity combat for example. In my fanfic earlier of you needing to defend this caravan of spaceships, you would be piloting an AC specifically modified for the harsh environment of space. New types of legs, thrusters, and weapons would be essential to make this work. I think that From could get really creative with this and enable us to make even cooler mechs. Just imagine it, having these specialized legs that almost just look like giant spaceship thrusters to maximize your potential speed, or having another version of the quads that is even more spider-like to potentially grab onto things in space. The options are endless. Another big part of this game would obviously be exploring vastly different planets and maybe even fighting your way through hordes of alien creatures. This was one of the very few issues I had with AC6 that I mentioned in my review a while ago. The level design team at FromSoft has done a pretty good job, but most environments on Rubicon looked pretty samey. Lots of snow, lots of steel and pipes. Again, not bad per se, but the times they did break off from those themes really made me long for some more variety. Also, before anyone gets the wrong idea and yells at me in the comments for wanting to change the game too much, I'm not saying that Armored Core should become No Man's Sky with mechs instead of spaceships. I think that there's a balance that can be achieved, where the Armored Core formula still gets to shine through at every twist and turn, but doing so on a much broader canvas. For example, while I love destroying ACs and other huge machines, that one mission in AC6 where you find these gigantic mealworms, at least on a human scale, made me fantasize about fighting hordes of weird bug creatures on some resource-rich planet that one of your clients just has to get to, because the profit would be insane, so they hired a squad of mercenaries, yourself included, to help them fend off the local wildlife and establish a base there to safely extract whatever it is they're looking for. I think that this would perfectly fit into the Armored Core universe, while also being a little bit of a break from the usual help some mega corporations fight each other shtick that we've had in like every game. And on the topic of lore and story, I think having this much bigger world in the game would also just feel like a natural progression of what we've seen in the franchise so far. Usually, the games are set on only one planet, like Earth or Mars, and the focus lies on the state of that world, complete with power struggles, intrigues, and obviously rogue AIs. But with Armored Core 6 being set on this completely different alien world, presumably outside of our solar system, and humanity's rapid technological advancements because of the coral substance, the floodgates have kinda opened. Zero-G combat, space travel, exploring unknown worlds, this might just be me, but I'd be super into all of that. And also being able to run around in a mech on some super cool planet with a bunch of secrets and weird creatures to fight would be the perfect direction for Armored Core 7. At least for me personally. This is what I meant when I said that we could reach for the stars. You don't have to like any of the ideas I have for how AC7 could look like, so be sure to tell me in the comments some of your predictions and wishes for the next game. I also asked the same in the aforementioned community Discord server, and I got a couple of interesting ideas from you guys, so let's quickly go over some of these, shall we? Burb expands on my idea for Zero-G combat by adding a grappling hook to that concept. As we all know, grappling hooks make any game 10 times better by default, so this would be a no-brainer. But thinking about it a little bit more in depth, this mechanic would open up a myriad of interesting gameplay options, especially while being in space. It could be used for some quick maneuverability, or manipulating the environment if there's any debris floating around. But I honestly doubt that this is something they would genuinely consider putting into the next game, as there's also way more instances where a grappling hook would make no sense, seeing as you play as a giant robot. But in my specific example here, it would be cool to see nonetheless. Y'all are a bunch of jokesters, aren't you? DICE gave me a fairly detailed vision of a post-apocalyptic survival Armored Core game, where you need to roam around to find new parts in the world to create a stronger AC to aid in your survival. I especially like the idea of creating one giant AC to take on all of the mega corporations in an attempt to better the world for the people. This survival-oriented vision for the new AC game is really cool, and the possibility of interesting choices you could make during a playthrough would most likely make for an extremely memorable experience. Also, feel free to pause the video here to read through DICE's whole message. The same is also true for Conrad's little fanfiction here. Conrad also took a similar approach to DICE, envisioning a more survival-oriented experience that directly follows the happenings on Rubicon, and even going so far as to suggest a collaboration with Kojima Productions. This is obviously a fairly unrealistic thing to happen, but we're not here to be realistic. We want to dream, goddammit, so maybe pause the video here as well to give this a read. When I asked you guys on your input on how the future games in the series could look like, this is what I was hoping to get. Radically different ideas that can inspire. I doubt that anyone at FromSoft will ever see this video, but if you do, random FromSoft employee number 156, maybe take some notes and try to pitch this to Miyazaki. While I think that it's a ton of fun to speculate about all these weird and outlandish ideas for a sequel, I also think that the next game is probably going to be nothing like anything I've said in this video so far. Hell, we might even still get an expansion for AC6 at some point. We currently have no idea what FromSoft is cooking up, so anything is possible. The most likely route for FromSoft to take is the iterative one, slowly building on ideas from the previous games in order to perfect them at some point. This is what they have done with the Armored Core series in the past, and also what they've been doing with their more recent Souls-like games. There really would be no reason for them to do it any different for the next one. I also didn't really go into much detail in regards to what the story of AC7 could be like, because there really isn't anything to go off of. FromSoft historically hasn't been the biggest fan of direct sequels, as in there's no direct story continuation from the previous game. Some early AC games kinda had something like that, but it never really was a direct sequel like what God of War Ragnarok was to God of War 2018, for example. We may never get to know what became of Rubicon after the various endings of Armored Core 6, but what is very likely is that the next game in the series will carry over a bunch of the themes present all throughout the franchise, well, maybe being in the same universe, tens or hundreds of years apart from anything that we know of. But at the end of the day, I'm excited for the future of Armored Core. Whether or not they decide to go full Battle Royale, mobile game, or insanely deep space odyssey, I will be there to give the game a fair shot, and I will cover it here on my channel. Even if I know that it's still a couple of years too early to be talking about that, but again, I want to hear what you guys think the next game will be like. Go ahead and put any of your weird wishes or predictions in the comments. I usually read everything you post down there, so consider your weird comment read. Yeah, I see you, FPOP1911. I see you. Since I've been taking a break from Armored Core related content, and I know that many people are specifically subscribed because of that, I am planning to do a comeback soon. Or, I guess this video is already kinda a part of that. Anyways, I'll be trying to finally get all achievements in AC6 by S-ranking every single mission live on stream. So subscribe and stay tuned for that. I will also go back to some of the other games that I've missed at some point, like actually finishing the 4th gen, and I haven't even experienced the 5th gen games, so yeah, there's still a lot to do. Also, would you be interested in an Armored Core 6 viewer run using the co-op mod? Alright, I'm just gonna stop yapping now. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting this channel. The recent support in form of channel members has been insane, so thank you all, and especially to those who gifted other people a membership. You guys are the best. But that's gonna be it for me. I hope you enjoyed this weird rambling of a video, and I will see you in the next one.